Hello guys, and welcome to another day with Zimaleta. In today's video, I'm going to be finishing up the engine. First, before we begin, let me show you where we're at so far. Hey guys, if you're getting ready to do an oil cooler change or oil cooler seal replacement on your 2007 Sprinter with 3.0 liter diesel engine and up, I think this video is going to be kind of important to just show you what you're faced with and some of the things that you're going to be doing and some of the things you may need to basically remember before you get started. Just to give you a good sense, a good idea before you even begin this project, what does it take? Because I already have completed this project and I just want to share with you guys my knowledge. Not that I'm trying to tell you how to do things. This is from my do-it-yourselfer perspective, and my approach to it may not mean that I'm the most correct one out there for this type of job. That being said, this video consists of 3 different parts. This portion right here where I'm kind of explaining everything that I had to do in order to actually get this engine completed. So this video is in 3 parts. Each part is about 5 minutes. The next part of the video, the next 5 to 6 minutes, I'm going to actually show you and explain to you everything you need to basically remove. I'm going to point those things out for you to be able to do this oil cooler seal job. And the next 5-minute portion after that, I will show you a 2008 engine that is actually completely out. As a matter of fact, all of these engines are completely out, so I'm able to do the complete walk around and pinpoint some of the things. So I actually want to show you some of the things on the 2008 engine. We're just going to talk about different things, you know, wrong with it and possibility, like our future little engine rebuild project, you know, stuff like that. But anyways, enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. So this is actually already a complete engine. I have replaced the oil cooler seals, and I just wanted to give you guys a little update because it's a lot of work. And in the videos where you will see me taking this stuff apart, you might be thinking, how the heck am I going to put all this stuff back together? Because it certainly is a lot. There's a lot of wires going every which way. There needs to be 48 connections that's made, and the way everything is so close together. As you could see, all the wire needs to go exactly how it's supposed to be, plug in where it needs to be, and you can't really mess up because you're not gonna have enough space to plug everything in. As you can see, I routed everything as you should. Factory, all the sensors are plugged in from the front, from the back. The wires are going here, they're going all the way around, they're getting plugged in over here, they're getting plugged in over there, over here, over there, and so on. Also, I do know where this tube is going. This tube is supposed to go and plug in to the fuel filter over here, but since this is a different type of a fuel filter, it doesn't have that place where it plugs into. But this is exactly how it was. It seems like there is a place for it. Maybe somebody cut it off at some point, which is kind of stupid. They should have just removed it right here and right there and just done away with the pipe if they were not going to use it. But that is that. As you can see, here's the glow plug module, everything where it needs to be, everything's plugged in, everything's going perfectly. I'm not too sure about this pipe though. This is the only thing I think is gonna fail. It can't fit real well over there on that side, no matter how I try. The pipe is it's very old, it's very brittle, and it's just, I recommended a new pipe for this thing because it's radiator pipe, you know, you don't want to have it go bust on you. So all of these connections are made here. This is a fuel line that I have twisted out of the way because I need to still do a fuel injector. I was going to do a fuel injector first before I did all the wiring, but then I, you know, I'm unpredictable, so I went ahead and just start working on this stuff and start putting stuff together on the engine as it's supposed to be, because once I know all this is complete, I just have very little to do, and that's it. So in today's video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm gonna, you know, install the plastics and everything that's gonna have to go back. Of course, I need to do this injector, but when I say in today's video, I mean like today. It's not going to be necessarily in this video. It might be in this video. I also might make this an individual video because, you know, to give you guys an update as to what's going on. But basically, if this fuel injector was done, which is not that hard to do, because it's already out, I just need to basically clean around a little bit and clean the, you know, bore out the cylinder inside, and, you know, the place for the injector, put it in, torque it to proper torque specs, and then I'm ready to lift this engine back up and start working it in over here, and we'll be installing it right there. So that is that, and this is the rest of the connections that needs to be made once I do plug in the computer, which is right here. This is other connections. Things are tucked out of the way so I don't step on them, and I don't want to have to break anything, that kind of thing. So here's an engine I'm working on for a customer. It's out of a 2010 Mercedes Sprinter van. This is actually after the fact, when I actually already replaced the oil cooler seals. I replaced the intake manifolds, and I've put everything together in the proper order, how it's supposed to be. This is for the air housing and stuff. So we'll have another tube that plugs in over here, and of course this needs to come down over here. Right now it's out of the way because I need to work on a fuel injector. That's the last step in this engine, and it's going right back into the vehicle. But you know what I've discovered after taking apart these engines? That putting them together, like as far as taking them apart and stuff like that, it's no big deal. The biggest hard, you know, portion is just getting everything off of it, all the wiring, every single bit out of here. And there's 48 electrical connections that need to be plugged in various places, including some of them are ground connections. And by far it's not difficult. Like the connections are, like, let's see, one of them goes to starter, one of them, it's a ground connection, goes right there, and another one which goes to the alternator, which is right here. And then of course other stuff gets plugged in, and it needs to be routed every which way all around. It's a nicely tight and everything needs to go back in the proper order. If you don't, you'll need to end up taking stuff apart. Luckily I didn't have to do none of that, because I basically know how to put them together, thank God. Because I would not want to have to take it apart and keep putting it together, especially if I do all the work. So that being said, the most challenging portion of the engine, to me, the way I see it, is actually putting everything back. Because just to do this oil cooler job, I needed to replace, like basically remove turbo, intake manifolds. I needed to remove this pipe, I needed to remove that, I needed to remove this. Along with that, I needed to remove this, I needed to remove the EGR thing, I needed to remove that thing, you know. So, you know, this complete, you know, assembly. Plus I needed to remove the fuel rails, these holders right here. I didn't have to move injectors, but I needed to remove every single injector pipe, including the one that runs over there. There's the fuel line that runs across, and I needed to remove this. Obviously I needed to remove basically the thermostat, because we had to replace the intake manifolds. You had to replace a bunch of seals, and I don't know if I mentioned the turbo or not. So lots of these things need to be removed, including the wiring harness. I had to remove, not because you have to remove it while doing this job, it's because I needed to replace the wiring harness due to the fact it was chewed up by some ices, and there was like 6 codes that was, you know, shorted out circuits, and they were not going away. So that being said, all that stuff is obviously too much. I mean, by the time you take everything apart, it's a bare engine, and being that it's bare engine, it's like the only thing that's left to do is, you know, pull off some of these other components here and start removing, you know, all the fuel injectors, all the glow plugs, and start removing, you know, like things like, you know, valve covers and stuff, and then you remove, you know, all the heads, and then you get down to the block and everything like that. Still a lot of work by any means, a lot of work, but there's a lot less wires that's going everywhere and stuff like that, because there's none, you know, because that's just like, when you look at it, if you're somebody that's claustrophobic, it's gonna make you sick, you know, because you're like, what am I gonna really do with all this, which would be really funny. Good thing I'm not, so I just do one thing at a time and, you know, just put everything together. So when I'm going to remove all this on my 2012 engine, I mean, the only thing is left to do is rebuild it. And that being said, on my 2012 engine, we have fuel injector leak here, 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 and right there. Trying to do the fuel injectors inside of the vehicle would be impossible, because there's absolutely like no access. You could access this injector and this one, that's it. For any other injectors, which I'm not lucky with those, engine would need to pretty much come out, because being that you know, they're covered in, you know, pretty much tar, they're going to be so stuck, it's going to be nearly impossible to getting it out of there. Luckily, Mercedes designed these injectors to have a thread on the outside, which makes it easier to put like a hammer tool or any other fuel injector puller tool. I use a hammer tool, and so far it works for me for this engine. For 2007s, I use a different one, which is, you could probably remove it in that tight space the way it's designed, but anyways, you can't use it for this engine. So that being said, I'm kind of thinking that, okay, I would still need to do fuel injectors, so they all need to come out anyways, and might as well take everything else out of it. And the engine is locked up. I would need to take it apart, and now I actually have, you know, something I could use to rebuild it. Like, for instance, let's say, you know, my block is messed up, or, you know, anything. I could actually use components from other engines that I do have. And once I do rebuild it, I'm going to build it perfect to where injectors will never leak, oil cooler will never leak, and that's kind of like bulletproof in this engine. And by the time I do everything, if you do it right, that engine is going to last quite a bit after that fact. So I am kind of thinking that I may rebuild it. But guess what, guys? Don't plan on that coming anytime soon, because for that to happen, I need to build a shop. So here's that engine. We're looking at it from the back. This is where the turbo would be. Now, this engine does run, okay? But it does have a knock in it. Now, I know that it has a knock in it because I was told it has a knock in it by a very honest person that sold it to me. He could not figure out where the knock was coming from. The likely indication where the knock possibly is coming from, you know, that's what everybody kind of thinks. Could be rod knock, obviously. This engine does have a lot of miles, but fuel injectors also can create a knock, believe it or not. And it seems very similar, almost identical to the rod knock. The only way you could really tell is by removing these covers here, and then taking a stethoscope, putting it to each fuel injector, and listening for that type of sound. And also another way of finding out is by simply unplugging each fuel injector one by one. Just unplug one, see if that knock goes away, unplug a second one, see if the knock goes away, so on and so forth until you have checked all fuel injectors. Now that is if the engine is inside of the vehicle. In my case, it's not, so therefore I can't really test that theory. The only way I could test it is by removing each fuel injector and sticking it in another Sprinter one by one and testing it like that to see if the knock actually comes from fuel injectors. Now, do I believe it's a fuel injector knock? No, I don't. I really don't even know how many miles this engine has. So yesterday I have removed a turbo from the Sprinter and I sold it for 450 bucks, which is an amazing deal for somebody, you know, including with a turbo actuator, because I do have one more turbo left. That's on a 2012 Sprinter, which currently I'm not selling that one. So after removing the turbo, I have discovered oil right there leaking out. The turbo itself is not leaking oil, but this is. And where's that coming from? Well, we have, you know, we have basically the exhaust manifolds right here. They run down on the side of the engine. Now, being that it's tipped this way, we have oil just coming out over here because it's leaning towards this way. So there's oil there. Also, there's oil right there towards the bottom of the flywheel. And there is no oil here where it should be technically coming from. So there's also a likelihood that we have bad pistons in this engine and they're passing oil. And there's another likelihood of that area right there seems kind of oily and grimy towards the bottom. It shouldn't be like that. Maybe it should be a little dusty, a little dirty, but oil spotty, not really. So there's a good possibility that the oil cooler rings have failed, or oil cooler seals rather, have failed on this one as well, which I would not be surprised, because if they are the orange seals, not the purple ones, most likely they have failed. They are terrible seals. And actually the purple ones are okay, but I'm not really impressed with their design. As far as the seal, they look like they are a good seal, but as far as the fittlement, it's pretty bad. It's actually made to be a little bit bigger. Maybe that's on purpose, but it doesn't quite fit inside of the metal. Maybe it's a good thing, so when things get pressed down, it's gonna be fine. But speaking of the oil cooler seals, I actually run a little bead, like a 8 around the oil cooler seals, even the new ones, because I believe at least that's going to prevent it from leaking. Let me know your thoughts on that. But so where am I getting with all this? I was thinking about installing this engine and just taking, I guess, a shot in the dark, thinking that, hey, maybe fuel injector leaking, you know, like knocking. But I could do all this work for nothing, installing this engine, and then realizing that, hey, oil cooler's leaking. I have, you know, knock inside of the engine. So obviously it's not going to last that long being in that state. So with the engine being out and stuff, I could do one of two things. I could either install it, or I could take it apart and actually rebuild this engine. But being that it's a running engine, we just don't know if this engine is any good. I'm kind of thinking, look, if I'm going to rebuild anything, it should be the 2012 engine.